So we have some information. This information is coming to us from Izen. Izen's going to give us a little bit of some info on what is going on in Midnight. Most important feature is the last being developed and why.
Alpha launched. All of the dungeons were developed. The mobs inside, the boss mechanics, the dungeon journal, the raid was already there and developed. All of the different regions, all of the different zones, all of the new models like tier sets, for example, or just item models. The soundtrack is there. The quests have been written and the story already is there. Meanwhile, the new UI is not. So what were you doing for all of these months? What we are talking about today is what by many is being considered, by myself as well, is being considered the most important tool, the most important feature, the most important decision Blizzard will make for the next expansion, which is the, obviously, purging of all combat add-ons, the removal of many of our beloved tools we have been using for years, whether you are immediately thinking about Plater or about weak auras or about your raid frame.
Right, exactly. I'm concerned.
Or voodoo, whatever they are gonna go away, and we have to now blindly trust Blizzard to give us some barely possibly passable version of all of those things we are losing. And we're not even trying to be excessively reactionary.
Yeah, I don't think we have to be hyperbolic. You know, it's not one of those things where we got to try and freak the fuck out. It's one of those things as I'm rolling through and I've disabled all my add-ons and I'm trying to get through the world of Warcraft. My biggest hang-up is Plater, knowing what's the most important kicks to make. And I'm a little bit more handicapped by way of using Achilles, is where I have my rotation on the one bar. Whereas now, for me, and only me probably, because I've had to move all of my regular action bars to where my Achilles would be. And instead of being on a single bar, they now consist of 3 different bars with all my utility, could be my trinkets, could be my hard hitters, and then my regular rotation. So it's a lot easier when you have something like that from Achilles that comes in one single line. And that's something that I hope Blizzard would try and do for us who are relying on such things. Everybody be like, get rid of that and just learn how to use your rotation. I'm like, okay, but what if you don't have time to do all that? I know I've been playing this game back at it for roughly 5 years, but what if I ain't got time to do all that? What if I just want to be brain dead and hit the buttons that I see lighting up and that's it, but in a single line? Because all I'm doing now is using Blizzard's assistant, not the one button, but the rotation helper, and I just hit the buttons that light up, just put them in a line like Achilles did. And so what I did is recently I did a test where I had Achilles running and I was looking at the action bar. They're relatively close. They are relatively close. Well, I have gotten to learn, as some of my time in this experiment has been going on, is exactly what buttons are important that I wasn't putting in my rotation. So if anything, it has gotten me to open up my mind to a little bit of that. So I give that for sure a thumbs up.
Or clickbait, like we can pull a wowhead and tell you, hey, look guys, this is the first look at the Blizzard's in-game meters, and look at how bad they are. They just have the options to show you damage done or DPS, and then healing done and HPS, and no.
Yeah, like for me, I track miscellaneous and I like to look at my interrupts. Another thing that people like to do is they like to track avoidable damage. How much avoidable damage did they take? Because that in turn helps them figure out what mechanics they need to learn and do better on. So to the way that I understand this, there's right now, not at this time, the variety that we have using details where they have to get on board and understand that a lot of these providers, these authors of these add-ons and weak auras have been doing this for many years for customization, for helping the player learn, for giving and projecting all the information that we want to have. It's really good information and data to use when you can go from top to bottom. Some people just look at damage or HPS and that's all. But for the more educated and the diehard, they really get into it a lot more, where they look at the options that details can give them, and they can try and put that into their UI. How you doing? Good morning, Invasion.
Nothing else, right? And then complain about it. Obviously, this was just a placeholder. These weren't actually in-game, actually working. I'm sure it will come out with...
Yeah, so far as I've seen for people playing alpha, they haven't even had that. They have the option to upload it, but it's not there, not visible. So I don't know that it's in alpha right at this moment.
More of the common thing we expect from a damage meter, like the spells done, damage taken,
how you doing, brother?
Healing taken, etc., etc. However, what is more worrying to me whenever I see some of these things is how late all of this is. You would expect that for a feature that you are considering the main.
But is it late? I mean, that to me sounds a little hyperbolic, because the game isn't going to be out until February. Alpha is alpha. Beta will probably be sometime before December, late November, possibly. So they'll have December, January, and the better part of February to really fine tune a lot of what we have not yet witnessed, of what they are going to be putting in.
Of the next expansion.
I will say this expansion release is going to be the most that Blizzard has ever released since the beginning of the game itself. This is going to be the largest.
Many of these things to have already been well polished ahead of time, well in advance. If you think about it, some players have pointed out how the biggest draw, apparently according to Blizzard, the biggest draw of the next expansion is that we get less. Our characters, we have less abilities, we have less buttons, we are being pruned.
Okay, now I'm going to give a hot take on this. Blizzard was getting too fucking complicated. I mean, if you go back to vanilla, you don't have as many buttons as you have now. If you go, and there was this one week or add-on that I never installed, but that I saw a video on, is that when you would highlight a certain ability, it would give you nearly a whole screen worth of the synergy that it would take from other spells and everything, which is good information if you want to have it, but that just shows you the complexity on what the game is giving you, and it's translated in all of the abilities that you have to put on your bars. No longer do you have just one or two bars. You've got to start using a third, maybe even a fourth, because you're putting all your pots. So like maybe your fourth one is just there for your consumables, but the three of them, you have those three for actual kit, for your whole kit. And that comes along with button modifiers, that comes along with your gaming mouse. So there's a lot. So when they talk about pruning, they're just trying to take one bar away and give you maybe 2 bars, because you're still going to have your kit and you're still going to have the abilities that you need to hit. But maybe now as a druid, you don't have to use 2 keyboards to get to everything that you want to try and do for your class. It's just insane and not very viable for somebody that wants to get into the game and find enjoyment in it. Nobody wants to suck when you come into any game and just feel like you cannot get over the hurdle of understanding, of doing good stuff. Maybe you're not a talented gamer like some of the people that pick up a controller or get into any game. They could just really, like, anything they do is at a higher level than medium. And not every player is going to meet that goal or that bar.
For UI, we got less. We are losing UI pieces we used to have for years. There doesn't seem to be much that we are gaining, that we are getting extra. And yet, even despite that, despite this big endeavor from Blizzard of changing the way players have played for many years, we seem to already be behind. Why is the question is why isn't, for example, the damage meter already fully in game and fully working in the alpha? But screw the damage meter. That is something very, very minor in your UI.
Exactly.
In game, for example, what is way more important than a damage meter is your raid frames, your party frames, right? And these aren't even in game right now. In the alpha, you just have the current default party and raid frames that you can find in live. And the question is, how can we be already in the public alpha? So this means that Blizzard had the developer alpha, the closed alpha of the game, working for several months. Now we are multiple weeks now. We are entering the third week of the public alpha running, and we still don't have raid frames or party frames.
Because they were, to me, they were fine already. What Blizzard gives us is fine. I don't, look, I just need to know if I sack you, did it take? Did I give it to you? So all I need to see is the emblem on your character. Did I provide that service for you? What else do you need? I don't get it. You know, if you're a healer, maybe you need a little bit more information, but all I need to know, did you die? Do I need to res you? I mean, I think we go a little overboard with what we need the game to tell us. It's a game. It's a game. If you want to do it like a EA Sport, then I don't know what to tell you. You know, go play League of Legends. I don't know, but this isn't it. I'm fine with what we have. One of the things that I understand about a recent game that came out called Fellowship is it's all about playing. You don't need to be handheld with everything that the UI is going to tell you. And it's one of the things that I believe that we as players are trying to push on the company. And I don't think we need, that's not our place. That's not our place. Is there going to be pruning? Well, yeah, that's fine. You know, instead of 12 buttons, you'll have 7. You'll have 8. But you don't need all 12. Come on now.
How late are these being developed? That is what has worried me the most. If I wasn't already worried and confused about the choice of losing all of these add-ons and trusting Blizzard in doing it all themselves, what is actually giving me the most worry is how late everything is. Because if Blizzard came up with the announcement of midnight and said, by the way, this is what we have been working for, you know, as soon as the alpha launches, you can see all of the planning, all of the testing we have done for raid frames, for party frames, for your new cooldown manager and your nameplates. We have been working closely, hand in hand with other successful and known add-on developers to get their insights and ideas on how they went at developing their add-ons in a certain way, and we were able after a few months to come up with this. So the alpha launches, we can see the raid frames and the party frames, many of the QOL improvements we would have expected from our existing add-ons. Same goes for nameplates, right? They come live. We have the option to color them differently based on mob type. Big HP guy colored a certain way, dangerous caster colored a different way. Multiple options to warn us of the important casts, not just a very tiny, subtle highlight around the cast, but something different. Audio warnings as well. What is instead worrying is that it feels like all of this is happening very, very late. It is crazy to me that according to our timeline of content releases every 2 months, 11.2.7 should come out in December, and then the next expansion should be out by February. This means that we are, less than 4 months away from the expansion, and we don't even have raid frames working right now and party frames working in the alpha. And this is supposed to be a major change going from the War Within to Midnight. It's supposed to be the biggest change going from the War Within to Midnight. So why are we so far back? Why is the damage meter not even in game and working yet? Why are the raid frames and the party frames not there yet? Why is the nameplate system still having to be changed so much? Even things that are being seen as major W's right now, which is something as simple as adding sounds to the cooldown manager. How is this a win? How did it take 3 weeks into the alpha for this to come out? It's a sound pack. People can get done and put up on a Wikora package in like 2 hours. How is this a win for the cooldown manager to have taken so long to come out? How wasn't this?
Is it fair to say that we're expecting a lot to be released at one time without testing? Internal testing, their QA first. I hear him saying all this could be done. It should be done. Where is it? Why haven't we gotten it? Why can't we test it? I guess I'm not built that way. I would rather they try and do it right the first time. I think there's a saying that's like, there's always time to do it right the second time, something like that. Meaning that if you're not focused and trying to take care of something right the first time, well, don't worry, because you'll get it right the second or the third time. I just slow down. I know this is a time and age where everything needs to be done right now. Get up, go. And, but let it cook. And we're there to give the feedback. Hopefully they're listening to the feedback. I hope you're all in alpha giving them feedback. If anybody's going for the rotation helper, let them know I want it in 1 bar, or else I'm going to try and, make it myself. We'll see if that works.
Even already into the cooldown manager when it launched. It's like we are getting news of supposed wins for these features, like a cooldown manager that should have been completely baseline, bare bones, default additions. And this was back when the cooldown manager was added, which was basically in this current expansion several months ago. This adding of audio, the adding of audio cues to the cooldown manager shouldn't be a big W in the alpha of midnight. I don't even mind this entire talk we have seen from the developers up to now about their fight with add-ons. They're being certain that the reason why they can't develop fights and encounters the way they want to is because they have to fight with add-ons. So if we get rid of add-ons now, we are free to make the mechanics we want to, which to some degrees it's true. Imagine Blizzard wanted to make a mechanic like this one. You are in normal, one player gets tagged by a debuff, you have to run to the pillar with the debuff to break it, or we all wipe. Now, if Blizzard wanted to make this mechanic in Mythic, they are adding, let's say, 3 different pillars. Then they are giving the pillars different stacks. So this one will have 3 stacks required to be dropped off. This one will have, let's say, 4. And then the last one will have just a couple. So now the mechanics is going to pop off, not just on 1 player, but it's going to come up at 4, 5, 6, 9 players. Now you have 9 players all showered with these debuffs. Now, what Blizzard wants you to do is being able to recognize, okay, who goes where? We need 2 of these debuffs here to drop the stacks of this pillar, and then 4 players here, and then 3 players here. How do we organize our spread in like 5 seconds before this all blows up and kills us? Obviously, this is solved by a Wikora. You just put the names on your note. You use some sort of conditionals, like for example, we are going to automatically mark the 3 pillars to always be like this.
This is Sparta!
Daddy Ops, hey yo, thank you so much for the follow. I truly appreciate it. Stay tuned. We're going over some of the new testing that they're doing in alpha.
For code, only 2 players will be assigned to cross. We're gonna check which one has a debuff. If you're checked with the debuff, you're ordered to go to cross up to the first 2. And then after the cross, we're gonna select 4 players to go and be ordered to go at purple, and then the remaining ones go to orange. So the Wikora does everything for you. You don't have to look which are the markers, where are the pillars, nothing. As soon as you get the debuff, the Wikora will tell you to go to cross, and that's it.
That sounds like a Fractalis fight, right? Whereas in Loom, you already are assigned. Now they do this through MDT or MRT. I'm sorry, MRT. But what you could do is, you know, just when you're communicating in pugs, it's usually your leader that will give you your group and tell you where to stand. If you're doing it on Mythic, what to soak, how many soaks to take, and then you go back to your spots. You know, once you get out of there, once you got so many stacks and you can't take anymore, run out. Your other guy that should be in line should go. You should also have alternates in case somebody dies and can't do the soaks. So that's why you put in a fourth or a fifth guy, just knowing that if player 1 dies, that means player 2 now moves up to player 1 and so on. It's not so hard. We've been doing these for many years. And I don't believe everyone downloads or has all these weak auras and add-ons that tells them. There's a lot of smart players out there. There's a lot of people that don't care. But if they don't care, then they're not in Mythic. You know what I'm saying? They're not in Mythic. They're still in LFR, maybe working their way through normal and trying to get a few bosses down on Heroic, never to get AOTC. But he was mentioning Mythic. It's all about communication, you know. I think what they also want you to do now, and they have, is always find yourself in a good guild so that you could be in comms using Discord, and then you just give your assignments that way. You know, I've always enjoyed Discord, TeamSpeak, Ventrilo, things like that. Why would it be any different now? And it has, because the world, even though we're doing a multiplayer game, has become really solo. They like a solo gameplay style in a multiplayer world, which is kind of a contradiction, is it not?
It's your job. The entire mechanic that Blizzard came up with of splitting yourself into 3 different groups depending on the charges of the pillars, having to know which ones each player has to go to, was neutralized by a Wikora telling you do this, which is effectively just the same example we just gave for normal. Just what we said for normal. Do this. We added a whole bunch of stuff for Mythic, but the Wikora made the mechanic the exact same. Even if that were true, which I don't think it is. It's mostly cope from Blizzard, because even if it is true that you can have easier developing of mechanics this way, there is still the problem that nobody needed you to also remove other interactions which would have only helped players and not given them a major advantage in the raid or in Mythic Plus, like being able to track defensives how they wanted, procs how they wanted, their own buffs how they wanted. That wasn't going to hurt anyone, or wasn't going.
But let me go back here, and I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but I do harp on it because the normal player will download all your weak auras and all your add-ons to essentially hear and maybe see, if they're not like me, tunneling on their action bar, because we have 20 actions that we could possibly hit out of our kit. And we've got to look at these bars talking about horrifying, shrill. We've got a web spray going. You got to look at all these attendants that are casting. Then you got to watch, are you standing in the healing circle from the druid? And then you're looking at, you know, your own health. If you're a healer, you have to look at all these party frames. You got to look at your rotation. You got to look at all these bars out here for the trilling, you know, when is enough enough? When is enough enough? And when is information too much information? Your brain, sure, you can train your brain, and that's what the 1% do. Yeah, sure. But if we were all that good, then we should all be cutting edge. And there are a lot of people that can get to cutting edge and do really good with parses, but that ain't me. I would like to think I'm one of the average players in the world. I definitely I look at this mess, and there's only a couple things that I need out of it. I need to see my party frames. I don't even need to know the kicks. I don't even need a kick tracker. I don't use it. You know, I'm looking at the attendance. I'm looking to see who's getting something off. If it's green, that's one thing that I need Plater to tell me, and I agree with a lot of the videos that I see. Green means it can go. It shouldn't kill anybody. I'm still gonna try and kick it, but it doesn't mean it's going to be detrimental to my party in Mythic Plus or in, you know, Raid, Mythic Raid. It shouldn't be, you know, you should be geared enough to be in there. You should have enough defenses, stamina to take the hit.
How they wanted.
And then there's this. I wanted to bring this up because this right here, this casting resonant barrage, other abilities come up in the middle of your screen. Meanwhile, your eyes are up here. And you have very little time to do this.
This is Sparta!
Hey, Singer Karaoke, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome in, welcome in. I'm watching this, and I'm not thinking about anything else. You know, I'm listening for what they have, the text-to-speech. I'll listen for that and know whether I should hit a defensive or AoEs incoming for the defensive usage, but it's just so much information. It's information overload for me. And I'm trying to watch my heat killer because I want to keep my rotation up. You can clean this up. I don't know.
Wasn't going to hurt anyone or wasn't going to stop Blizzard from developing anything. Same goes for healers, allowing healers to keep showing HOTS the way they want, buffs on players, defensives on players the way they want. That wasn't ultimately really going to hurt their ability to develop things. Honest, I'm still not buying their explanation, but even then, even if we bought their explanation, at its base, what is preoccupying me more is how is everything so slow and how is everything so late. I know players have been circulating this tale that apparently there is literally 3 devs in charge of doing all of this. This was an off-topic, an offhanded comment made by Scarizard, who is a former dev of Blizzard. Also basically said, I know a guy who knows a guy who has told me that there is like less than 10 people working on this overhaul of your UI. And, you know, he worked with Blizzard all the way up to just a few months ago.
I heard that. He was on the bench. Or on Potty C, rather.
It is still worrying how slow everything is, both on why there would be so few developers working on this if you are putting so much value into this change, into this sudden destruction of all of the add-ons.
He also said that he left because he didn't like the way that the direction that Blizzard was going. Keep that in mind. He also said he left because he didn't like the direction that Blizzard was going.
Not be
So
a constant,
take that with a grain of salt.
Disappointment and source of
frustration. But that came out of his mouth
because of the amount of red tape around Blizzard. How slow everything has to move from minion to middle level manager to superior to department head to executive in order to actually get something done, as opposed to an add-on. An add-on developer who fixes the annoying clipping of the bars, or the add-on developer who fixes the ability to track certain casts, which can be done by a single GitHub hook request in like 30 minutes. Meanwhile, when it comes to Blizzard, these are things that take weeks to be implemented. We're definitely never seen the level of attention Blizzard has to give to fixing something like the UI in such quick responses that add-on developers have been giving over the years. Can you imagine Blizzard doing like DBM or bigwigs? You get 3 different updates a day with those add-on mods, and then Blizzard is gonna give you like 1 update every 3 weeks on its add-ons. And this time you have no choice. It's not that you can say, I don't want to use them because...
That's true. That's true. Whenever you open up your Curse Forge, whenever you open this up, this is always got something that you can update. And it's really going to be in you know, if you don't have this, this is what I use. There are other ones, I believe. But I mean, there's always something that is coming up for you to update. And Blizzard just doesn't work like that. You need authors on these things daily to hear the bugs that are coming and being reported to fix those within 24 hours. At least in within 4 or 5 days, not 2 weeks. That's that. I get that.
The Blizzard add-ons will be the only ones that you can play in combat, so you have to play with them, which is why all of this is so worrying. The fact that
that's why I had it ready. I had it ready because before I want to even start my game up, I wanted to make sure I had my shit updated.
For being something so important, right? So relevant for the next expansion, why has this been so slow moving? Why the alpha launched with so many features missing in this? If you think about it, just think about it for a second. The alpha launched, all of the dungeons were developed, the mobs inside, the boss mechanics, the dungeon journal, the raid was already there and developed, all of the different regions, all of the different zones, all of the new models like tier sets, for example, or just item models. The soundtrack is there, the quests have been written, and the story already is there. Meanwhile, the new UI is not. So what were you doing for all of these months as you were developing?
Here's my hot take. They disabled all the add-ons right now. But when midnight falls upon us for release, what do you guys think if Blizzard then gives you a Wowhead post saying that all of the weak auras are going to be available until we can sort this out, kind of thing? You will get to use them all. Kind of what they meant in the very beginning. But the reason they did it this way was that they could get all the feedback, all the numbers, all the tweaks that they could make in the meanwhile. And yet, no, they won't have it ready for the release of the game. But they will then say, look, we're not going to disable all of them for the beginning. And then maybe work towards 11.1 or 12.1 instead of the implementation of it at 12.0. The guy talks a lot but fails to realize Microsoft owned Blizzard. They want the add-ons removed so this can be ported to consoles. Correct. I understand that, and I agree with that. I agree with that 100%, Rice. Me and you are on the same where I'm tracking with you. But they still don't want to lose their player base in the beginning. So they're going to do it like this, work on it some more. Maybe there'll be another beta test for 11 point, or I keep saying 11, but it'll be 12.1. They'll take away all of the add-ons again with theirs now in a better state. And then you get to test them and taste them a little bit and then send back your more information. Maybe by 12.2, all add-ons are removed.
4 new different zones, 8 in total, actually, new different dungeons, all of the mobs inside, the bosses inside, developing all of the mechanics inside of those dungeons and inside of those raids. Why do we not even have a working, nameplate function in the alpha, or a party frame and a raid frame function? Why did we have to wait 3 weeks into the alpha to get 30 sound effects?
What do you mean he had a good run? What do you mean he had a good run? Hey, Godsmack, good morning. Good morning, buddy.
Manager. What else were you doing for the several months coming up to this alpha public version, in the closed version of your alpha, to have all of these things come up so late?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good.
Doing in midnight, the removal of
trying to see where we're going to be at. Trying to see where we're going to be at with these add-ons that Blizzard wants to implement, while taking away ours. It's concerning. I've heard around the community that people are, if it really shits the bed, so to speak. Just like every gamer who has played World of Warcraft says, and I believe Shadowlands really did prove the breaking of the addiction that World of Warcraft had on a lot of people, there's a lot of people that didn't come back. A lot of people that went on to play other games or just quit games all entirely and go outside, touch grass. But there's a community base growing about the concern and the state that this is going to be released in. Are they going to be able to feel like this is still their game with the pruning of the classes, with the removal of add-ons? Like Ryson said, in console, you can't download weak auras. And there's only so many buttons on a controller. Take away the ability to baby cheat, then why play? Personally, I'm not worried about it. I played 21 years ago when there were no add-ons. Me too. And I found it truly fun then. So I'm not a doomer. You know, I'm not a doomer. But I believe that a lot of the player base now has become too reliant on these.
Why is everything coming out so late, so delayed, and still, not to forget, still very, very
They do it with
basic
Final Fantasy,
very, very
Ryzen.
bare bones compared to what
Final Fantasy is on mobile and on console.
In these past
Always
years
has
in
been.
terms of quality of their UI. So this is what has worried me the most when talking about this change. It's not even about losing the add-ons. It's not even about losing them without having to be able to choose an alternative from Blizzard, or the whole thing about pruning your specs and classes, and the idea of Blizzard to change, to be free of the way they can now develop.
Quite honestly, how
encounters and
easy
all of
can they
that.
make the game
I would
without
still be
add-ons
fine
though?
with this if I knew Blizzard had a plan. As the kids say,
Yes, it can. Yes, console can handle the size of a game like World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy 14 is played and cross-platform with console in mind. As a matter of fact, you know, it's been doing it probably longer than it was on PC. I could be wrong about that, but I believe a lot of their games go to console first and then it'll go PC. Final Fantasy 14 might not follow that, but is definitely a game that is on mobile, console, and on PC.
if I knew they were cooking, if I saw the alpha already and I saw the big, great plan of Blizzard on how they wanted the
I'd have
UI
to download it to
Instead,
let you know.
That is what is worrying, is that I'm seeing nothing. I am seeing no plan. I'm seeing no direction with these changes. It's like,
And Ryzen, you're talking about capitalism. And that is exactly why I believe a company should always be private. The minute they go public, there's always going to be an instant reflection in the way they treat their company, their employees, their product. And a decline surely comes with that. And I don't like when they go public. I like it better when they're private, but the thing with it is then greed comes in and ruins the beautiful things we come to love, like video games.
they came up with the idea of purging the add-ons first, and then someone at some kind of meeting raised their hand and said, okay, so maybe we have to also give them an actual UI then? And that's when they started scurrying, trying to actually fix the fact that they haven't touched the UI in their past 20 years of development, and having to try to do it all at once in this alpha, all very late. That is what is currently my main.
So basically that's what I'm getting out of that. That's Izen giving us some information, but I truly believe that this goes a lot of ways, because you guys are bringing up some great points. You're bringing up the ideas of why Blizzard is doing this. They're getting pressure from Microsoft, who now owns them. You have, the orders coming down from the top. You have them being told, hey, we have to take this away so that we could give it to more and make it more accessible. They're going to have to work on the accessibility for disabled. They're already trying to do that. So that's kind of how that goes. Yeah, you have shareholders from all over the world who don't care about the game. Yeah, they don't play. So that's how that shit goes. This is Izen. Good information.